What if the drink in your glass could make your favorite meal taste twice as good, or quietly ruin it, just because you picked the wrong mead? By the time we're done, you'll be able to grab almost any bottle from your shelf and know exactly the kind of food it wants to be served with. And if you stick with me to the end, I'll share one simple pairing that has turned hardcore mead skeptics into people asking for a second pour and a photo of the bottle. Whether you're brand new to mead or you've been mead making and tasting for years, there's a good chance you aren't getting everything you could out of your pairings. Most people think about wine and beer with food and forget that mead even belongs at the same table. That is a huge missed opportunity because mead isn't just one thing. Before we even talk about styles, it helps to know what you're really actually feeling in the glass. When you taste mead, your tongue is picking up sweetness, acidity, bitterness, alcohol, warmth, and body, while your nose is reading all the honey, fruit, spice, and floral aromas. All those pieces matter when you put the mead next to food. Sweetness is simply how much sugar is left after fermentation. A dry mead has most of the sugar fermented out and feels crisp, while a sweeter mead leaves more sugar and feels richer and rounder on your tongue. Tart or sour notes come from acidity. A little acid makes mead feel bright and mouthwatering, like a squeeze of lemon on food. In a healthy mead, that sour note should feel more like citrus or green apple, not vinegar. Too little acid, and the mead tastes flat or heavy. Too much, and it starts to feel sharp and tiring. Bitterness in mead is usually subtle. It can come from tannins and fruit skins, spices, oak, or tea additions. A small amount of bitterness or tannin adds structure and grip, which cuts through rich or fatty foods. But too much can make mead feel harsh. That drying, slightly puckery grip on your gums and cheeks is called astringency, and it's mostly driven by tannin, even when the mead itself doesn't taste very bitter. High alcohol levels show up as warmth or a gentle burn in the back of your throat or chest. In balance, that warmth makes your mead feel powerful and satisfying. Out of balance, it can taste hot and overwhelm both honey character and the food. Body is how thick or thin the mead feels in your mouth. Lighter body meads feel closer to a crisp white wine. Fuller body meads feel more like a dessert wine or light syrup, and that weight has a big impact on which foods they can stand up to. Carbonation changes things again. Still meads feel smoother and more coating, while lightly sparkling, fully carbonated meads feel more lively and cleansing. Bubbles lift aromas and help scrub fat and salt off your palate, which is why fizzy meads often work so well with fried or very rich dishes. Finally, pay attention to the finish or aftertaste. Some meads leave a long honey and fruit echo, some finish clean and short, and some leave more alcohol, heat, or bitterness behind. That finish is what actually sits next to the next bite of food. Once you can notice sweetness, acidity, bitterness, astringency, alcohol warmth, body, bubbles, and finish, the style labels start to mean something instead of just being words on a bottle. You have to nail all that at once. Just start noticing one or two of those pieces each time you taste, and the rest will fall into place with practice. You have a dry, semi-sweet, and sweet traditional meads. You have fruit meads called Melomels, spiced and herbal meads called Metheglins, and even apple-based sizers or grape-based piments. With that kind of range, you could pair mead with almost anything, from a light salad to a big roast dinner. The trick isn't memorizing a giant chart. It's using a simple framework you could reuse every time you sit down to eat. Once you know that framework, pairings almost always choose themselves. We start with the one mistake that ruins more mead and food combinations than anything else, and the fix that easily makes your plate and your glass get along better. The big trap is intensity mismatch. If your dish is light and delicate, and your meat is thick, sweet, and heavy, the drink just bulldozes the food. On the other hand, if your meal is rich, salty, or spicy, and your meat is thin and shy, the food completely steamrolls the drink. So here's the first part of your pairing formula. Before you pour anything, ask yourself if the dish is light, medium, or bold. Then pour a mead that feels like it belongs in the same weight class. Light dish, lighter mead. Big, bold dish, mead with more body and flavor. Even if you did nothing else, just matching intensity would save you from a lot of bad pairings. Now we layer the second part of the framework. Sweetness and heat. This is the place even experienced mead makers mess up. To understand this, you have to see how flexible a simple traditional mead could be just by changing the sweetness. Think about a traditional mead. Just honey, water, yeast, and thyme. This one style acts like 3 different drinks depending on the sugar level. A dry traditional mead with little or no sweetness and a crisp finish is your friend for lighter meals. Picture roast chicken with herbs, grilled fish with lemon, fresh salads, and a citrus dressing, or vegetables cooked in olive oil and garlic. A dry traditional mead doesn't coat your mouth. It rinses away salt and fat, leaving behind a clean honey aroma that supports the food instead of fighting it. If you move into off-dry or semi-sweet traditional meads, you get a bit more body and a gentle sweetness. That extra weight lets you lean into dishes with a little spice or richer sauces. Mild curries, honey glazed carrots, pork chops with apples, or a salty baked ham all love a mead that has enough sweetness to soften the edges. At the sweet end of the spectrum, traditional mead starts to behave like a dessert wine. That's where you think about cheesecake, fruit, tarts, buttery pound cake, or a simple bowl of berries with whipped cream. Sweet mead wraps around those desserts and amplifies the fruit and cream. And there's a fun twist you want to remember involving salty blue cheese. But we'll save that for the big payoff at the end. Before we get there, let's look at the most underused tool in your arsenal: fruit meads or melomels. What if you stopped treating fruit meads as just for dessert and started using them as part of your pairing tool? When people skip melomels at dinner, they miss out on the most intuitive matches you can make. If you match the fruit in the glass to the flavors on the plate, you get instant harmony. Take berry melomels with blackberry, raspberry, or cherry. Those dark, bold fruit notes love roasted and grilled flavors. Think grilled pork, burgers, barbecued pulled pork, or wood-fired mushroom pizza. The roasted elements in the food lock in with the deep fruit in the mead and make the whole bite taste bigger. On the sweet side, a berry melomel with chocolate can be ridiculous in the best way. Flourless chocolate cakes, brownies, or dark chocolate truffles become more complex when you add a sip of berry mead. The fruit lifts the chocolate, and the chocolate anchors the mead, so it doesn't feel too sweet. Citrus-focused meads, or meads with bright acidity, are great for seafood and anything with fresh, zesty flavors. Shrimp tacos with a squeeze of lime, grilled salmon with lemon and herbs, or a salad with orange segments and fennel all benefit from a mead that echoes that citrus note. If you've ever had a white wine with good acid cut through a rich fish dish, you already know the feeling. A zippy citrusy mead does a similar job. Then you have tropical melomels: pineapple, mango, passion fruit. These love spice and char. If you serve them with spicy tacos, hot wings, or Thai or Indian dishes, the sweetness and fruit help cool the heat. The spice makes the fruit feel brighter, acting like a little reset button for your taste buds. Now let's talk about the bottles that scare people: spiced and herbal meads, or Metheglins. These create some of the most memorable pairings when you use them well. Spice meads with cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, or vanilla are tailor-made for fall and winter meals. Roast turkey, glazed ham, roasted root vegetables, or butternut squash soup all feel naturally at home next to a Metheglin that carries those baking spice notes. On the dessert side, apple pie, pumpkin pie, and gingerbread are almost too easy with a lightly spiced mead. Herbal meads with rosemary, thyme, and lavender pair beautifully with dishes that already taste like the garden. Roasted chicken with herbs, lambs with rosemary, goat cheese salad, grilled vegetables, or even herb focaccia all sync up here. The mindset is simple: treat mead like an extension of your seasoning. If your dish already has thyme, a mead with thyme will feel like part of the recipe, not a separate drink you have to force in. At this point, you have a lot of good options, but how do you avoid the one pairing that makes everything taste flat? There are 2 quick checks you can use before you take a sip. First, think about sweetness versus heat. If your dish is spicy, a little sweetness in the mead helps cool the burn and smooth out sharp edges. But if the dish is delicate and not spicy at all, like a mild whitefish, a very sweet mead will crush it. In that situation, a drier mead lets the food keep its voice. Second, think about richness and fat. Rich foods like bacon, fried chicken, creamy pasta, or triple cream cheeses need structure in the mead to cut through. That structure could come from acidity, tannin, bubbles, or alcohol. If the mead is syrupy and low in acid, it just piles more weight onto an already heavy dish. On the food side, remember that salt and umami change how the mead tastes too. Salt can make a mead's fruit or honey seem a little sweeter and can soften bitterness, which is why salty cheeses and cured meats often work so well with richer, sweeter meads. This is where carbonation and temperature become your secret weapons. A lightly sparkly mead served a bit cooler acts like a scrub brush on your palate when you are eating something rich or fried. Tiny bubbles lift that fat off your tongue and reset your taste buds for the next bite. Lighter, drier meads usually show best slightly chilled, while richer, sweeter meads often shine a little warmer so their aromatics can open up. Just that small temperature tweak can make a pairing go from fine to wow. Don't just take my word for any of this. Test your own taste buds. The easiest way to feel the difference is to run a tiny tasting at home. Pour 2 different meads, maybe a dry traditional and a sweeter berry melomel. Make one simple dish you already like, such as a roast chicken, pasta with olive oil and garlic, or a basic cheese plate. Take a bite, sip the dry mead, and then notice what happens. Then take another bite and follow it with the sweeter mead. You will feel right away which pairing makes the food taste brighter and which one makes it taste washed out. That moment when one combination suddenly clicks is what we are chasing. If you want to turn it into a tasting party, keep it simple. Offer small pours, start with lighter, drier meads, and move toward darker and sweeter meads. You don't need a formal setup, just a couple of bottles, one good dish, and a bit of curiosity. We're getting close to that big payoff as I promised at the beginning, the pairing that works even with people who are sure that they don't like mead. But before I give it away, remember that simple framework you're building here. Match the intensity of the food and the mead. Check sweetness against spice and delicacy. And then decide if you want to echo the flavors on the plate and create a contrast. Echoing flavors means the mead carries the same notes as the dish, like citrus with citrus. Contrasting means you play sweet against salty, or bright acidity against rich fat. And now for the never-fail pairing that has shocked more than one guest at my table. Take a rich, sweet traditional mead with deep honey character next to a plate of strong, salty blue cheese or well-aged cheddar. Most people think it sounds odd. They expect the flavors to clash. Then they take a small piece of cheese, let it coat their tongue, and follow it with a sip of mead. The salt and funk in the cheese pull hidden flavors out of the honey, and the sweetness in the mead softens the sharp edges of the cheese. Suddenly, what sounded strange turns into the smooth, almost dessert-like moment. I have watched people's eyes go from wide on the first bite and sip combo. Someone who said they weren't into mead has asked me for another pour or the name of that bottle. That is what a smart pairing can do. It isn't magic. It's just an understanding of intensity, sweetness, structure, and how flavors echo or contrast what is on the plate. If you start using those ideas, you'll be far ahead of most people pouring drinks at dinner. Grab a bottle of mead you already own, pick a dish you already love, and try one thoughtful pairing tonight. Your new favorite combination might be waiting in the next bite and the next sip. If this was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe. Also, check out my other videos and playlists over here. Cheers and happy mead making.